Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and stay tuned by clicking the bell icon. HeartStopper. Is the lack of sex in Netflix's LGBT series a problem? With the premiere of the second season of HeartStopper, a teen LGBT series on Netflix that adapts the graphic novel by writer Alice Oseman, a debate was established on the networks: the absence of sex scenes in the plot. Part of this criticism comes from profiles that, for the most part, are over 30 years old, which gives us some clues as to why, for such people, the lack of sex in the series is a problem. However, before we move further into the issue, it is necessary to point out a few things. The series follows a group of teenagers. The plot revolves around the couple Charles, Joe Locke, and Nick, Kit Connor, and their friends, all teenagers and high school students. In this way, we are faced with characters aged between 15 and 16 years old. Another point: it is obvious that sex is part of teenagers' lives, but the central point of the story told by Alice Oseman is not that. The author wants to address coming out of the closet and the consequences that LGBT phobia brings to the lives of young people who are still building their identities and looking for a place in the world. Without falling into the commonplace of LGBT tragedies, which we also like, HeartStopper's plot manages to address heavy themes but without becoming paralyzed by them. Alice Oseman manages to show that, even in a so-called first world country, repulsion towards LGBT lives is present in schools, homes, and society as a whole. There is a long way to go, but there may also be room for romantic love and optimistic exits. Some of the criticism considers HeartStopper's text out of touch with reality, due to the lack of sex, but I must deeply disagree, and I want to list some points. I've already spoken about the technical, aesthetic, and textual quality of the series here and here. But to counter the criticism surrounding the second season, I will start from 3 points that, in my opinion, explain why the absence of sex is a problem. Ghetto politics, violence, and invisibility in cultural products. Throughout the 20th century, the LGBT+ community was forced to live in the shadows and in political ghettos. Until the end of the 1990s, LGBT sociability events that took place in the morning or afternoon were very rare. For the most part, non-heterosexual people only socialized at night. The nighttime socialization imposed on LGBT+ people due to structural LGBT phobia has conditioned generations to live around bars, saunas, and nightclubs. Sex and anonymity set the tone. This is not a problem, but when there is no other option, it becomes a question of social control. They can exist, as long as they remain away from public and common spaces. Imposed on the margins of societies, LGBT+ people have lived and still live subject to all types of violence. Here we have another issue. We are not used to consuming narratives that are not linked to contempt, violence, and fatal tragedy. Therefore, when we come across stories from the cultural industry that break the norm and become popular, we find it strange. Where is the death in this plot? But notice, in HeartStopper, there is violence and heavy drama, but they're not central. In addition to involuntarily living in nighttime ghettos and targets of all kinds of violence, throughout the 20th century we also did not exist in cultural products aimed at the masses. Of course, there is an entire LGBT+ literary and cinematographic production, and the Mixed Brasil de Cinema Festival is there to prove it. But being in mass culture is another matter and another level. This scenario began to change at the beginning of the 21st century, with Brazilian soap operas with LGBT+ characters that had a narrative structure, beginning, middle, and end, and films such as Brokeback Mountain, 2005, Hoje Eu Quero Voltar Sozinho, 2005, 2014, and With Love, Simon, 2018. In other words, until the debut of HeartStopper on Netflix, we were educated on completely heterosexual romantic comedies, and when there were LGBT characters, they were completely disposable. The Netflix series provides is precisely this. It brings the ideal romance in youth, which involves love forever, romantic love, and which until now had completely heterosexual narratives. Another issue that HeartStopper brings up: LGBT people who live during the day and don't fill themselves with chemical substances, legal or illegal. And beyond that, lives that don't revolve around sex as a practice. For generations that were formed around the ghetto and a nightlife deeply marked by sex, series like HeartStopper, or now the film Red, White, Blood, Blues, Prime Video, represent a break with everything we were educated to learn as LGBT sociability, causing strangeness and repulsion. On the other hand, productions like HeartStopper present the current and future generations with countless possibilities for lives that are not restricted to nightlife and sex. For those looking for this plot, I recommend the excellent Euphoria, HBO, and Skins, Netflix/Channel 4. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, comment, and share.